We're called to order. The budget hearing of the Township Council is called to order. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, be advised that adequate notice of this budget hearing of the Township Council of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, was made by the posting on the bulletin board at the municipal complex and transmitted to the officially designated newspapers indicating that this budget hearing would take place at the Franklin Township Municipal Complex at 7 p.m. on Monday, February 8th, 2016. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Deputy Mayor Chase, Councilwoman Francois, Mayor Kramer,
Here.
Councilman Onyechaka,
Here.
Councilman Prasad,
Here.
Councilwoman Robinson,
Here.
Councilwoman Sherman,
Here.
Councilman Vasanella,
Here.
Councilman Wright.
Here.
Very good. Public discussion. We're going to limit this to a half an hour and 2 minutes per speaker. I don't think that's going to be an issue looking at the audience. Is there a motion to open the meeting for public discussion?
So moved. Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion about public discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting is now open for public discussion. Anyone wishing to speak on any item of interest may please do so now.
Mr. Mayor, seeing no one conforming, I make a motion that we close public session.
Do I have a
Seconded.
second? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Public discussion is closed. I will note to everyone, a personal note, you may hear my cell phone ding and me occasionally looking at my cell phone. I have an ongoing medical issue at the hospital that I'm monitoring, so I may even have to step out for a moment. But I will not be silencing my phone. So the next item is departmental budget presentation. And I can tell that our first presenter will be the collector of revenue. So have at it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, Carol Langone is the director of her office, what's commonly referred to as the tax collector's office. However, it is not just tax, it's also water, so it's actually revenue collection. So, Carol, if you could just briefly go over your proposed operating budget.
For 2016, I'm asking $9,930, which is a reduction over last year. I had purchased a letter opener. It's a sophisticated machine that helps us open several hundred envelopes very quickly. I'd also like to mention that I have an employee who is retiring at the end of the month after 28 years of service to the township. I had sent you all an email, so I just wanted to mention that. And what we're going to try to do is continue with the staff level we presently have.
So you're not rehiring?
No. Are there any questions regarding the line items in my budget?
I do have just a quick question. There's a note that says that does not include the mail opener and the 15 budget at $1,600. So
That was the cost of the opener last year. That's no longer in the budget. It was bought last year.
Oh, okay.
So it was a one-time purchase, so therefore that $1,600 is not included in this year's budget, so that's why you see there's a very minor increase of $65 under the printing and binding. Obviously, the printing is the printing of the tax bills and the water bills. There's a reduction of $1,600 under office supplies, which is where we budgeted that machine. So there's a net decrease of $1,529 from last year.
Any more questions?
Okay. Thank you, Carol.
All right, have a nice evening.
Joyce?
Next is purchasing.
Yes. Councilman.
Councilman Wright, did you have a question?
No, no,
Okay.
thank you.
Ms. Miller. Ms. Miller. I want to tell a little story about Miss Miller. First time I ever met her, back when I was on Tough, there was something printed in the Franklin Times that I was very upset about. I came in there loaded for bear, and Miss Miller, in her usual way, completely disarmed me in about 30 seconds, and it became a nice, quiet chat. And I will always remember that about Miss Miller.
Thank you very much.
So, pur-
Okay. This works.
Yeah,
So Joyce Miller is our purchasing agent. She is a qualified purchasing agent, which enables us to purchase things. It has several benefits, and mostly related to thresholds that are set by the state for towns with qualified purchasing agents. We're allowed to purchase things at a higher level without certain requirements that the state puts on towns that do not have them. We actually have 2 qualified purchasing agents because Kathy is one as well. And so, Joyce, I just ask you to go through your budget, and council, if you have any questions of her, then just yell them out.
this is a flat budget, no increase. Most of my budget is spending used by the other departments. Postage for the mail machine, which is used by everybody. Archive boxes, used by everybody. Copy paper, used by everybody. Leasing of the 2 big copiers in our building, used by everybody. So there's a couple things that are printing of purchase orders, used by me for everybody. So there are a couple, meetings and training to keep the CEOs and membership, but I think you'll see that it's pretty straightforward from last year. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from council? So I have a question, just looking at your biggest item, of course, is postage. In 2013, $65,000, in 2014, $65,156, and in 2015, $60,000, and again, you're asking $60,000.
Right.
How are we spending less on postage?
Because the postage is used from year to year, if there's additional in my budget that is not used, we put it in the machine because we're going to need it the next year anyway. It's not a loss. And so it's going to be used, and so you'll see that there was a transfer at the end of the year, talking with the finance officer. There's also, you never know what it's going to be. At one point, we were doing mailings of the tax bills.
Right.
Now the one tax bill goes out.
There were multiple
Never know.
mailings of the tax bills, and now you get one tax
And
bill.
now you
So
get
that was the decrease that you see when it went down from 14 to 15.
Yeah.
We no longer mail multiple tax bills. We mail one tax bill annually.
You also do not know if there's any special mailings from the clerk, if she has to send out notices, if there's some property purchase or a special hearing, or you just never know. It's one of those things you take a guess at. But we've been pretty consistent, as you can see.
So we budget for this, and then we buy it in real time as we need the postage?
Yes.
Okay.
Right,
I mean, you load the machine.
It's not like we've bought a bunch of forever virtual stamps and
Not at all.
No.
No. Matter of
That
fact.
wasn't that my joke the other day? Yeah. Yes. No, we don't buy forever stamps.
And just to share with you, because we use the postage machine, we do not pay 49 cents a stamp. We pay 48 and a half cents every time the envelope goes through. So there is a savings for that use of that, for the meter.
Okay.
I do have one question. Where is the newsletter and whose budget? Is it in
You
here?
know what?
The newsletter isn't in anyone's budget, really. It's funded out of a grant,
Oh.
Clean Communities grant, so that
Okay.
it won't show on a budget.
Does that include postage?
Yes.
Everything?
Charge postage to that as well.
Okay.
You have to have, obviously, you have to include the recycling information in that, and we try to
Right.
put in as much as we can to satisfy that requirement.
It's a bargain.
Any other questions for purchasing?
No, just a comment.
Yes.
Ms. Miller, thank you for all your work and continuing to keep the budget in line and keeping it flat. So you do a lot more with a lot less, so appreciate your work.
You're very
Thank
kind.
you.
Thank you, Councilman.
And I would also like to state that, well, I consider everyone here ethical. You are beyond reproach, and this is an important area where a problem could be a problem, and you never let a problem happen, and I appreciate that.
Very kind words, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Next will be Human Resources, Raven Williams.
Good evening.
Evening.
So there's more than one budget that Human Resources has responsibility for. There's also the insurance lines too. So we'll start with her main budget for Human Resources. And this budget actually shows an increase of $19,000 over last year, but I'll let Raven go through the budget for you.
For the most part, my budget did remain the same. A significant part of the increase that Manager Vornlocker is referencing is in reference to the continuation of the management training program. This year, the emphasis is going to be on working with one department in particular to help them come up to speed and have better interactions with both each other, other departments, as well as the residents. In addition to that, we are continuing the management coaching program, more or less for certain managers who need additional training, but also for anyone who wants to rotate in. So that's where the significant increase comes in. There is an additional increase, a slight increase for pre-employment testing, and again, that's just based on the number of anticipated new hires or replacements that we're going to have coming in 2016. And I believe those are the biggest ones. Well,
I think that's pretty much the increases for your
For my OE,
particular
yes.
OE budget for Human Resources.
Yes. And for the group health insurance, very good. The main increase in that budget, of course, is the cost of the health insurance for 2016. We saw an aggregate of approximately 12% increase across the board for medical, dental, and prescription insurance. Otherwise, all of the numbers held static.
I'm having trouble finding.
It's under the insurance tab, Mayor. All of them are under the insurance tab. First page is probably deceiving because we jumped, and the first one we spoke about was the group health insurance, and then actually the first page in that tab is our liability insurance and workers' comp.
One question before we go on to insurance. How much are we spending for that specialized management training? How much of that increase?
$17,000. Is that 17.7, I believe, is the increase in the budget?
17.7, yes, that was the increase.
Having a hard time finding that on this sheet.
Line item 36.
On the HR sheet?
It's on the HR sheet, yes.
Which line item?
042, education and training.
I have a question in regards to the training.
Yes.
Is this for 1 year? Is this aggregated across a couple of years, or is this a one-time?
This is for the entire calendar year.
OE budgets are only for the year, January 1 through December 31. So
Well, I
it would, for all of these, that, as we go through them, it can only be for that period of
Right,
time.
but some training, they offer you pay in the year, but it's for 3 years' worth of services of training. So is this for just?
No, it's for 1 year.
This is for 1 year. And it does include, we actually just completed a management workshop earlier this month, and that was also included in the cost of the ongoing training of the managers and the department.
I found it, thank you.
You're welcome.
One additional question. Is this on-site training, off-site training, or
On-site,
on-site? So a trainer comes?
yes.
And a lot of the training is one-on-one, right?
It is.
Yes.
There's one-on-one and group, and the plan is for this year on that one department in particular is to work, on a little more intense basis, not only with the managers, but with the rank and file employees within that department.
And also integrate one-on-one as well as group with that department.
Will that be reflected in their performance reviews?
It certainly should be.
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions for Human Resources?
Well, we still have some more to go, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So so Raven talked about the group health insurance, which, as she mentioned, shows an increase of $302,371 across the board to include medical, optical, dental, and prescription, as well as the flexible spending plan, which I believe was flat, an increase of $1,000, I'm sorry. There's also, on, I believe, the page prior to that in your book, is the liability insurance and workers' compensation insurance. This is our annual assessment by the JIF for our liability insurance as well as our workers' comp. And that overall shows an increase of $42,924. The bulk of that, well, all of that, for what that's worth, is in our annual assessment by the JIF.
So is that, oh, I'm sorry, any questions on that?
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Did somebody else have one?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Health insurance increases are based on our use of the health insurance, or is this across the board an industry increase?
It's based on our utilization for the enrollees in our plan.
Okay, so every year we expect something of this magnitude?
Well, last year you were flat.
So nobody,
No, this is a negotiation between our broker and the provider. So it is a negotiable fee.
based on the market?
Based on the market,
Okay.
based on our
Utilization.
utilization of the plans.
It's a combination,
There's a number of factors. It's a rather complicated process, and that is, there's an offer made, and then they go into negotiations, and we come out with what we feel is our best case scenario. In this particular year, we also went out onto the market. We went into the open market, and so that means other insurance companies bid for our health care, and it was determined that we would stay with the current provider with that increase based on the results that were received when we went on the open market. That was reviewed by financial oversight in depth.
Just one more question. Line 020, I see we're not spending the same amount of money we did last year. What was in that line item? That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I'm just curious what it is.
Well, I mean, we
Other contractual
so the other
services?
contractuals, which is 029.
Oh,
All right,
yeah.
so yeah,
What?
there's a review that's required in the finance department, and it's not an annual. It's
every 2
every
years.
Every 2 years.
It's every 2 years, so it's out of this year's budget. It'll be in next
Next
year's
year's.
budget.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, thank you.
Anyone
Wish
else?
I could say it went away forever, but it
Yeah,
didn't.
okay. I said it
Anyone
was
else?
good.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Mayor. One question. You're saying this is bid out every year, or?
In
Do we
reference to the.
not
Your
bid?
healthcare?
Yeah.
Our healthcare is negotiated every year.
Same
You know,
broker,
and-
or we change?
Same broker.
Okay.
And it's one of those where if the current provider comes with what we feel is an excessive increase, we, among other things, can request that we have our plans put out on the open market to see what interest there is and if we can get a better rate from a different provider. We did that this year. We're staying with the current provider.
Thank you.
It's also, the union contracts that we've negotiated have also requested that we provide them some flexibility and options on co-pays and deductibles that they can buy into so that they can
Now,
individually lower their payments or something, and we passed an ordinance allowing that to happen.
If I'm understanding you correctly, Councilman, you're asking us if the unions are negotiating with us for the ability to choose from multiple plans, without going into any great deal about current negotiations.
No, not current negotiations, but, I mean, wasn't there some request that?
There have been meetings amongst all of the collective bargaining units and the management of the town and our broker as far as their health care benefits that are provided. Different unions have different health care plans, and all are limited to one, although, well, there's one that's kind of an A and B type plan under the same plan, a PPO 1 and PPO 2, that's afforded to a few of the unions. However, there's a desire amongst all to try to work out an agreement where we can provide more than one plan that would hopefully decrease the cost to not only the municipality but to the employee, and that's currently underway. In fact, when do we have a meeting again?
February 24th.
February 24th, we have another meeting with all the department, with all the union heads to continue that line of.
We actually saw some of the savings come to us also when the employees started to contribute.
Well, that was in 2000.
Right.
That comes as a result of state law.
Right.
And that, this number here is reflecting about $1.4 million in employee contributions.
Right. Which we were paying before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not a secret that healthcare costs continue to rise.
That's it. And it's just nationwide. It's not,
Right.
certainly not limited
It's
to
not
Franklin
limited to
Township.
us.
It's everywhere.
Yes.
One question there. I had none, but the last rounds has spurred the question. The amount that it goes up, the percentage, is that taken into account the increased amount that employees contribute? Do you know what I'm saying? Is it actually?
Their contribution is based on a percentage of the premium. I mean,
I guess what I'm saying is I'm just trying to gauge how much it's been going up the last few years. Is whatever the percent increase, is that a percent before or after the increased percentage because of the state law mandates the employer contribution?
That would be before.
If you're asking, so
I'm just curious. It's not a right or wrong.
If the premium increases, their contribution increases to the same percentage that they pay. So, I mean, and just to use nice round numbers, if their policy is $30,000 and they pay 20% of that $30,000, they pay $6,000. If it goes up to $35,000, they pay $7,000. It's a percentage of the premium.
Okay.
But the actual quote that comes is based on the experience rating that they have of our group, and they project into the future, and that's how they come up. And, they're looking at a crystal ball in projecting, and that's how they come and start the negotiations. And then
You're talking about the insurance company themselves. Yeah, no, right. I think what the councilman was talking about was our employees, how our employees pay their portion of their.
Yeah.
Well, no, actually, I was just wondering if the percentage increase, because healthcare keeps going up. Last year it was flat, prior years there were some increases. I was just wondering if you were calculating the percentage, those costs go up, which is happening all over, if that included the state, good or bad, mandating a few years
When the
back
numbers
that
come
people...
from the insurance carrier and from the broker, no, it's just based on.
Gotcha.
It's the overall, it's
Thank you.
whatever our total obligation is what the increase is. And then we take that total obligation and we subtract off it what our employees are responsible for.
Right. But my point was more towards the experience rating and keeping wellness programs in place, which you have done a great job.
We have, yes.
To lower our experience rating so our premiums don't go up as much. So we're proactively doing that.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
We are. And in
So
fact,
thank you
if
for
you
those
see,
efforts.
and
and weight management programs and everything else that are,
Yes.
that
so
are happening.
if you jump back and you can see that there in fact is money in that portion of the budget
For the wellness?
for the wellness.
Yes, we kept that at $3,000.
The wellness program is currently budgeted at $3,000. And that allows us to run the different employee programs to encourage them to participate in things just like what you said, Councilman, weight loss programs, walking, the Raven has been very good, and the Wellness Committee as a whole have been very good about encouraging that in our employees.
And they've been giving out nice incentives, too.
They do give out nice incentives, and that's, I will put feather in cap, Councilwoman. I believe it was you that encouraged us to continue that in the budget and encourage our employees to participate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So I have a question on the JIF,
Yes.
went up $43,000 roughly. Was that because we are doing things more risky, because we didn't comply with things?
Actually, so what, I'll answer this one because I probably have more involvement in this than Raven as far as the administration of the JIF. I'm a fund commissioner on the JIF, as are all of there's a representative of all the municipalities in our Central Jersey Joint Insurance Fund. No, actually, we have consistently been at the top of our JIF, and our JIF has been at the top of the MEL, which is the Municipal Excess Liability JIF, as far as JIF statewide. Our lost time ratio this year was number 1 in the JIF.
Yes.
We're actually,
By number one,
by number 1 means we had the
Yes.
least amount, the
Yes.
best. We were the number 1. We received cash incentives for that based on, a refund of sorts. No, actually, we consistently are recognized by the JIF for our performance, not only in our reporting on claims, our professional liability is exceptionally low. And so that means we're not being sued a lot.
That's right.
That's a very good thing. There is currently a safety program that Raven is our safety coordinator. That program was just recently recognized at the reorganization meeting of the JIF. We received the Award of Excellence for that program. So no, the rates are simply because, not unlike healthcare, insurance goes up. And obviously, our JIF has an underwriter, and insurance costs increase. I think that, though, if you look at the amount,
3,000.
43,000 on $1 million bill. That's a pretty
0.4%.
minor increase. So, but no, we are a top performer in the JIF, and like I said, our JIF in general, in comparison to others throughout the state, is one of the top performers as well.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just
Yes,
a comment that
Prasad.
part of the insurance is that you're in a pool, and you may be the best, but there are others who are pooled in together with you, and combined, you get an increase based on sharing the risk with everybody.
Absolutely.
And so that's part of what happens, and as a result, we're still getting our proportionate share increase.
Yes.
But it's not as much as some of the others that, based on their ratings, experience ratings as such. So thank you for keeping a safe environment, keeping our workers safe, and keeping our workman's comp claims under check. So thank you.
And also reduction in
Are there more items for Ms. Williams?
and the risk too. Reduction, thank you for that, reducing the risk.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions? Or?
Are there more items for Ms. Williams?
I have no more.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a good night.
I will now move on to Planning, Zoning, and Redevelopment Agency.
For those of you who are wondering why we're jumping on the agenda, the police department, the police department will be on your agenda at some point tonight. Lieutenant Durham, who presents their budget with the chief, is hopefully has landed at Newark and is on her way here from there. Her flight was delayed 2 hours this afternoon, so we're just going to kind of bump them until the point comes where they walk through that back door. So we'll jump to planning, zoning, redevelopment, also to include environmental and historic, and Mark Healy, our director of planning.
She couldn't have put one of those little red lights on the plane and gotten... Okay. Mr. Healy,
Good evening.
good to see you.
Good to see you. I'll start with planning and zoning first. The budget is, the operational budget is proposed at just short of 86,000. That is the same exact amount, total amount as last year. You've heard this presentation from me before. The vast majority of this, 50,000 of it, is for legal services for both the planning board and the zoning board. Another 30,000 is requested. We are doing the Township Master Plan this year. It is going to be done in-house. We made this same request last year. We didn't actually spend any of it last year, but we're asking for 30,000 on a just-in-case basis, in case we need some outside consulting services for the master plan. So that's 80 of the 86. So, in effect, my operating budget is about 6,000, and about 4,200 of that is for education and training for staff and for both members of the planning board and zoning board. So, for example, when we have new planning board members or zoning board members, so this year we have 4 new planning board members, there's mandatory classes, so that money is there for that. There's very slight modifications in certain line items. So, for example, printing and binding went from 150 to 500, and that's associated with the master plan. And then there's just associated minor changes. But again, the overall amount is staying at just short of 86,000.
Any questions for Mr. Healy?
Just like to make a comment. I was at a Christmas party, and some of the people at the table were from Branchburg, and they told me that their town had not met their core obligation, and they were in a panic because the township was holding town hall meetings saying, hey, we've got problems and we're going to all have a tax increase. And they asked me what we were doing in Franklin, and they didn't even know I was a councilman. And I said, we were fortunate to have a planning department that planned for CORE, and we're ahead of our CORE obligation. So money spent on consultants and our lawyers is money well spent, and they have kept us out of trouble. And the kind of hot water that all of us as citizens get into with potential tax increases to meet core obligations is something that something that you've kept us out of trouble. So please, thank you for that, and let's continue. And you're holding the line otherwise, so, we can't ask for anything more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions on this? So my question was, in 2013, the legal services were 36,000, 14, 40,000, and then in 15, 50,000, the actual spent. Was that because in 13 and 14 there was so little building and there were meetings canceled, et cetera?
I think No, well, it might, yes, I think that's part of it, but we also, the 50,000, I think, is what we've requested every year, just in case you don't know with both planning board and zoning board if litigation at any point, that's why we need good representation, but at any point litigation could pop up. So we ask for the 25,000 for each board. And then, as you can see, in 2013, 2014, we didn't actually spend all of that amount.
And I'm just going to jump in here a little bit on a bookkeeping issue. So we brought on board a new chief financial officer in 2014? 13. Okay, end of 2013. And one of the things that we did was there was a shift in the way that we encumber money in certain lines of the budget, and one of those is legal services. And so you see that it says actual on 9/30/15 on your budget book, and you're at that $50,000. That's because the entire $50,000 that was budgeted in that line was encumbered in the beginning of the budget year, and then it was charged against throughout the year. So when we're all said and done here, and I don't have the number right in front of me right now, that number is not going to be $50,000. That number will be some number under $50,000 that was charged against that line throughout the calendar year. And that differs from the way things were done in previous years, and we started this last year, and as some of you may remember it, some of you may not, you'll see this periodically through the budget process, in that when there are certain things that we know are going to be charged against every month or every 2 weeks, depending on the, when we do the billings, it's really every month for these type things, attorneys bill by the month. You take that $50,000, for lack of a better term, a blanket purchase order, and you charge against it throughout the year, knowing that that's what your total is. There's no question for the department head when they see that, because they're presenting those vouchers every month and knowing what they're drawing down on. So what you're really seeing there is what the total was that was budgeted for the year, not the total that was spent as of 9/30/15.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Anyone else?
So if you were to extrapolate that 50,000 by 25%, you're adding another $12,000, so that puts you at about $72,000 versus your budgeted $80,000. So you're still coming out about 10% below what you had spent, no?
You're talking about 40,000 versus 50,000?
No. I'm talking about what.
No, and I'm saying that's, no. That's what was,
Yeah.
so this is where there is some confusion, and it probably should be clarified, and we can certainly clarify it at the next meeting. This is not what was spent. This was what was budgeted, and this was what was encumbered. It was encumbered back probably in the end of March, beginning of April, when we had an adopted budget. We encumbered the entire amount and then just charge against it. My guess is that you would probably see a number very similar to what the number was in 13 and 14, right around $38,000, $40,000, which is generally the way that the numbers have run.
Yeah, but this actually shows through 9/30.
And I'm telling you that that's not what was spent. That was what was encumbered. And encumbered and spent are certainly two different issues. And Kathy, if we could just have those numbers, if council has questions on the encumbrance versus the charge at December 31st.
We have bills from this line that will be paid at tomorrow's.
Right. I mean,
That's why this hasn't been updated yet, because we're still paying bills. The purpose for encumbering.
Yeah.
Use the microphone.
Sorry. When you have a large expense, like the $50,000,
Thank you.
by encumbering the money, it makes sure the department doesn't inadvertently spend that money that you know you need on something else, and that you don't get to November and December, as we were doing in a couple of areas the year I got here, and not have money for monthly expenses that you know you have. it wasn't a problem with this particular department, but it is possible to think, oh, I have all this money left. If you don't have your regular recurring monthly bills already encumbered, you could wind up spending the money you have budgeted, say, for your phone bill or for legal expenses on something else, and then get to November and December and not have enough money to pay your core bills, which is a major problem. So we do it to align the expenses properly.
Yeah, no,
The theory is very sound. The problem is that it makes an appearance here that $50,000 was spent, and it wasn't. And I understand, Councilman, exactly what you're saying. That's what I'm saying. We can have the numbers
I understand.
that are year-to-date. The truth is, that wasn't the amount. So it says actual 50,000.
Right.
But it wasn't actual 50,000.
okay, that's where the confusion is.
And I agree, and that's why.
To clarify, as I understand it as a layman, is that if I budget $50,000 for a car, and I go out and put it in my savings account, and then when I actually go and buy a car, and it may cost me 45, then I have actually saved 5,000. The actual may have been lower, but again, that $50,000 is committed for that purpose of a car.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's what we've done.
And
We've committed
so,
that
but
for this
actual spending would be the 45, which
Exactly.
you'll report on when I buy the car. And the deal goes through, and the
Yes.
payment is made. So there's a lead lag of about 90 days between actual work done and us paying it, so to catch up on it, so thank you. Yeah.
Other questions?
So if I'll present the
So-
redevelopment agency.
So I
Yes.
have a question. So the casual observer may say, well, you spent 36, then 40, and you're budgeting for 50. Why don't we shave something off of that? And why don't, this is may not seem like it, but that's a softball question because I know what the
Since
answer
it's such a softball question, I'll let Mark answer it.
Well, in previous years, I think I did try to shave some off, and I think the council actually said, why don't we add a little bit more on, just so you have a little bit of a buffer. And the reason for that buffer is what I explained before. We obviously try to spend as little as possible. We have been averaging around the 40,000 mark the last few years on legal services, about 20,000 for each planning board and zoning board roughly. We're asking for 25, as we do every year, just in case the need arises for more services, in case there's litigation or some special, legal matter that pops up that requires a little bit more money.
Or a building boom.
Yeah, well, building boom will most likely, the planning board in particular will be paid through escrow. The homeowner type applications that go before the zoning board, those get charged, the attorney, we pay for those. We don't charge a homeowner to an escrow for variance for a deck. So those fees are, so if there's a glut of those in the next year, yes, that will come out of our budget.
So it has a correlation to the economic cycle, basically.
It does to some degree,
Yeah.
particularly if there's a number of applications from homeowners.
Great, thank you.
And we can only spend money we budget. That's really the key answer here. We can only spend money we budget. If we don't budget at the appropriate amount here, and we have to spend more, the state of New Jersey has a problem with us taking money out of our bank account that we didn't put in our budget.
And that's the key point that I was hoping would come out. There are many constraints in the way New Jersey requires us to do our budgeting that you would not do with your home budget.
Correct.
But they are loops, they are hoops we have to jump through. And it makes some things not seem logical.
And
But
I mean,
wanted that explained.
and without a full-blown budget tutorial here, there are, as you said, Mayor, very many constraints and many quirks in the way that New Jersey requires a municipality to do a budget. And if there's not money there, we can't just take it from somewhere else. There, I mean, and that's not a blanket rule. There are exceptions, but generally speaking, we can't just take it from someplace else.
Right, that was the softball answer I knew was there, but
There
I
you go.
wanted the public to hear it. Mr. Healy.
Since I prematurely jumped to the redevelopment agency a few minutes ago, I'll move to that at this point. The redevelopment agency is funded through an operational subsidy from the township. The last few years, we have requested the amount of $40,000. This year, we're requesting a reduction to $30,000, with the balance to be financed through the amounts that are in the fund already.
This is under the Economic Development tab, Council. That might
Thank
be
you.
why you're having a hard time finding redevelopment, because it's under Economic Development.
No wonder.
It's the stipend that goes to redevelopment, and that's where it's budgeted.
Mr. Healy, you have to use small words with us.
He jumped me. I didn't have a chance to say it before he got to work. So that's where it is, and it's the line for 029 other contractual items under that economic development budget.
You want to start back over again since none of us were following you?
I'll make it, we used to ask for $40,000, now we're asking for $30,000.
Thank you.
And the reason for that.
reason for that is?
So the reason for that, I'll get into the financial end of this. So the reason for that is that when the township budgets that dollar figure for redevelopment, because the redevelopment agency is an autonomous agency, it takes that money and it's moved into a trust where it is allowed to stay and accumulate. And because not all of the money that the council has given the redevelopment agency over the years has been spent, there's a balance. And Mark and I, along with Andy Hodgelik and Kathy, have discussed this, and based on the amount of work that will be required to be paid by the redevelopment agency, their attorney and such, we're confident that there's a sufficient amount of money in that trust when bolstered by this $30,000 contribution from the township, that we don't need to have the $40,000. We can have the $30,000 this year and be comfortable again with that theory that you must have the money budgeted
In order to spend.
in order to spend, exactly.
Other questions?
So would it go up to 40,000 again next year?
No, I think
But
every year.
Mark did so we feel that amount at $30,000 going out into the future will be sufficient to fund the redevelopment agency, given the scope of work that the redevelopment agency has in the foreseeable future.
Okay.
In the past, we did a lot of redevelopment work with RPM. Wasn't that part of
Yes, that's,
the activity that
yes, that's
took
still
up
part of the.
resources? Yeah.
Yes, RPM and Leewood are the two main redevelopers.
Right.
That's ongoing. And then historic and environmental, those budgets are submitted as well. Historic Commission has a proposed budget of just short of 2,900, and the Environmental Commission, I believe, is 1,200.
Commission's tab, which is towards the back of the book.
After unclassified.
Right.
W is right after unclassified before state expense.
Now, I know that the main thing for the Historic Commission is that they want to have, they have to take some sort of courses each year to maintain their qualifications, and so that someday when SHPO gets around to it, we'll get certified local government accreditation. They put the money in case they have to take sort of full-fledged college courses, but generally they've been able to find ways to take the courses to get the necessary training and certification for very much less money.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Councilman, for just doing Mark's budget presentation. That was he could not have done it that well, I know, and
What
he's
he
very
said.
thankful. What he said.
Well, I sit with the Historic Commission.
You do, and I appreciate that input.
So I thought I could explain it.
You did, and you explained it better than Mark or I could, and so for that I'm appreciative. I think that I'll put in some very, very basic layman's terms, what the councilman said is that our Historic Preservation Commission is basically trying to take over a significant portion of the State Historic Preservation Office's responsibilities on the approval of work to be done either on our historic buildings or within our historic district. And you can yell at me if I'm wrong. And it has been a long and tedious process, and we feel that we are just about there. You have often heard me complain about how long it is taking us to get the approvals necessary to do work on our very own buildings. And this would speed that process up dramatically. So that's what this funding is for that training that was necessary for our members of the Historic Preservation Commission. So I think obviously it is a very important thing. It would make things go much easier if we could do that.
Those reviews, would be done by our Historic Commission as opposed to SHPO. So to give you an example, in order to get certified local government status, it took the state 2.5 years to comment on our application. So it definitely would speed things up.
Wow. And we applied to SHPO for certified local government status, I think about 3 years ago. And it's taken them most of that time to get back to us.
Yep.
I think we will be, they want some revisions in our ordinance establishing the Historic Preservation Commission. So at some point in the near future, I imagine that will be coming to council. Incidentally, I feel I ought to know why the Environmental Commission is asking for more money, but I don't.
I think part of the increase, I believe, is for a banner. So we can have for certain events like Franklin Day and
Right.
other events.
That was the bulk of the request for environmental was so that we could make more of a public presence, and they would have a banner to show at the table, and we certainly felt that was appropriate. We're asking them to do more public Franklin Day Festival and events such as that, fireworks, so that this was to get the word out that our Environmental Commission is and doing all of the things that they're doing. You certainly know the events that they hold, rain barrel workshops and the like, and this was for the, and published material for the Environmental Commission as well.
And the more money is $700.
The more money is $700, correct.
Let's move on.
Thank you. I believe that covers all of Mr. Healy's responsibilities, so thank you, Mark. And I looked to the back of the room with my back eyeballs there, and I saw a lieutenant now sitting next to a chief. So I guess that means our police department is ready to
Police
come up.
Department, Chief Lawrence T. Roberts and Lieutenant Christian Durham.
You gave him a different middle initial.
And
You just made it up.
I'm
and
sorry,
she had
his
time to
middle
change her
initial was
clothes,
T.
too. She had time to get a uniform.
You want to
I'm
sit here?
sorry. What's your middle initial? W. I thought it was a T. I'm
You
sorry.
could two sit there. You two can sit there. You can sit there too, there, Chief. So the chief and Lieutenant Durham will present the budgets for the police department, 911 dispatch, animal control, and emergency management. So I believe that you start with police in the book. So, and they're all in that order, then emergency management, 911 emergency.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
As we went over our budgets and financial oversight, I think you'll see the biggest jump in our budget come from, there's two things. First one is we have 2 unmarked vehicles, cars, in our operating budget because cars could not go in the capital budget, so they are listed in here. The second thing, actually the biggest jump in our budget is our education and training, and that is purely consisting of the college reimbursement tuition. We have had a lot of new officers. We have a lot of officers going back to school to earn their degrees, both graduate and undergraduate. And that is definitely the biggest jump in our budget. As you see, that's under line 42. And that budget, including training, request was $140,800. And our projected, I basically polled each officer we have, if they're planning to go to school, where, the credit value, if we go by the Rutgers tuition credit. And that is $125,000 alone. So that was by far the biggest jump in our police budget.
And I will say, though, with that being added, thank you to council, because I usually don't need a mic.
Yeah, you
You do.
You're on TV.
You're
They, I'm on TV, sorry. They, being on the state chief's executive board, we were discussing continuing education and police departments and police officers, and we have the most officers with master's degree in the state of New Jersey. Even bigger than the bigger departments, the inner city ones, so
And how does that benefit us?
how does it benefit? It's a more well-rounded officer. Better educated, understanding stuff better, it's just better rounding of them.
Also keeps you out of court.
Yes.
That's got to be wrong.
If you
The
do get
civil
sued.
type
Oh,
court.
yeah, because of
Yes.
280 to 7,000.
So that's good. I mean, we do require it for upward mobility. As you know, the ordinance reads like to be the chief or deputy chief, you have to hold a master's degree. So at least, like we said, we're giving everybody the opportunity to finish their education. But thank you, because that is quite an accomplishment to have the most master's degrees in the state of New Jersey.
The most per capita or the most?
The most.
Pardon?
Yep,
The most period?
yep, period.
Here, right here.
Wow.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's right here. Physicals.
Question, where are the two cars in this
Something
budget?
went down, something went up.
Purchase of vehicles,
They're under line 51. You'll see it's $41,297.
Right there.
Okay, yeah.
So
The SUVs are in the capital.
So, just to clarify, and the chief sort of just said this, the state of New Jersey does not consider patrol vehicles, cars, as capital because their useful life is less than 5 years. Sport utility vehicles, trucks, and the like are capital expenses. We'll, at our next budget hearing, discuss the capital requests of the police department and other departments. But specifically for police cars, they have to be included in your OE budget because they don't meet the requirements of a capital expenditure per the state of New Jersey. I might argue that we have cars that last much longer. Most, if not all of our cars, other than those that are taken from the fleet because they're involved in accidents, all last longer than 5 years. So I don't know where they come up with their useful life calculations, but that's what the state of New Jersey says, so we have to abide by it.
Now, a lot of the maintenance work is also done by our own Public Works.
Well, all of our maintenance work is done by our Public Works Department, and so I think
So
that.
that's a testament to their
Absolutely.
work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and
Keep our
our
cars
fleet
running longer.
is kept in top running condition, and like I said, our cars do last longer than 5 years, but the state of New Jersey doesn't care, and either does the auditor.
Question on the line 028, there's a jump in the need for consultants or whatever it was. Could you just let us know what that was?
Sure. That was put in this year's budget for anticipation of the chief giving a promotional exam. And that's a combination of really, the written examination is what the cost is. The state chiefs of police charged to give a written exam. When you have as many officers as we do in our department, 104, you have many who are eligible, especially at the sergeant exam, to take that, which you have to have 5 completed years on of service here. So you're going to have, and they charge by the number, basically. So as I called them to ask for a number about approximate officers, and that's also in there, as well as any applicant who basically moves forward, they go through medical and a psych, which is not in here, but also a drug exam.
Just to draw attention to calendar year 2013, you'll see that there was a promotional exam given in 2013, and it was $6,750. So it's another $250. That's because we have more officers eligible for promotion, like the lieutenant said.
And we won't know, Councilwoman, exactly the number, because some choose not to take it. So once we announce it, then we do that. But like I said, like she said, the state, we bring in the state chiefs because we follow the ordinance to a T. And I won't deviate from that because we are the test case in the state of New Jersey from years ago when an officer sued under age discrimination. I was not the chief then. And I had to add that in there. And
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, I know. And the judge wouldn't even hear it because he said the process is totally fair. And the state chief's exam actually, unlike civil service, comes from a set of books that you're asked to read. So it's been approved by every outside organization because it gives everybody the same chance. The material, the answers, and when you actually take the test, it'll say, per INOM police practices, page 42, what would you do in this situation? Actually tells you where it's coming from. And then, of course, we give a psychological exam and a medical exam. I'm not going to get into what happens if you fail it at that level because that'll take us hours.
We weren't even sergeants when that
happened. And I do want to, now I'll take the time if I can, Bob. I went to financial oversight the other day, and I want to thank them for listening. Would ask you for a captain, a lot of questions came up. And I wanted to just touch right now when I had whole council here on the subject of Hamilton Street. We know it's a priority. I know it is for council and for the citizens, and it is for the police department, everybody that lives down there. And we're working on a lot of different programs, and this will definitely help because one of the new responsibilities of that captain will be to oversee Hamilton Street. And not just the police function, because we are getting, we get quality of life issues, and the responsibility of that person will be to contact Public Works or contact, zoning and all that other stuff. But at the rank of captain, you're a senior commander, so you'll have total authority. Yes, do I want to know what's going on? Of course. But still, you have the right to make the decision, where Lieutenant Stone, you feel you want to do a drug operation, you've been getting Scarlet Knight's calling and says, I'm just using an example, they're dealing drugs in the back of Scarlet Knight, or they're jumping the patrons when they come out, okay? The captain has the authority right there, dual authority, to make that decision, allocate the manpower, and go from Jump Street. That person will also be a member of the Hamilton Street Advisory Board. So it'll encompass everything, but they will be a member. Well, we have members now. We will have a senior commander there. And like I said, you just give that individual the leeway to make any decisions he or she sees fit to make. And yes, ultimately, I would like to know about it, but you don't need my approval. You can make the decisions. And of course, it'll also be a patrol function where, as I explained to financial oversight right now, we have the big gap where we have lieutenants reporting to a deputy chief, unlike most other surrounding towns where the lieutenants report to a captain. So there's interactions every day. So really, we have the deputy chief being pulled, doing double duty, and when he's not here, I have to do it. So it is good to have senior management, like I explained to financial oversight. But I just wanted to bring up to everybody that individual will be an intricate part, and one of their major responsibilities, besides patrol, will be Hamilton Street.
Chief?
Yes, sir.
How does that stack up in terms of command structure with other neighboring towns and?
Good question, Councilman. So it'll get us up to speed. I mean, you have South Brunswick, which is 30, I think the exact, don't hold me, 37, 38 less officers, may even be 40 now. They have a deputy chief and 3 captains. You have New Brunswick with 3.
So how many captains do we have now?
None.
Okay.
None. And I've said this, and I'm going to go into it for the whole council. As the chief, and I know all of you trust me very much in my decision. Don't take this the wrong way, Lieutenant, because I said it the other night too. Any lieutenant that was sitting here, I'd say it. If, God forbid, I don't want it to happen, I were to get ill, and the deputy chief were to retire, because he is coming on 30 years like I am, it is impossible to go from the rank of lieutenant to chief. And I would be doing a great disservice to this governing body and these citizens of this town without a captain. I don't even think you could go from captain to chief. But at least we're having a structure. We have a flow. And we're going and you're punching every ticket. You learn at every rank. Look, when I took over, I was a deputy chief for 6 years. It was still, when you sit in that chair, it's a little different between the chief and the deputy chief, just like it is between a lieutenant and a captain, and you gain the experience. It also gives us, knock on wood, we don't have a lot of lawsuits, but I've been deposed before as the chief because ultimately deep pocket theory. They always want to, sue everybody. They sue Bob too. So when they're sitting there, I remember when I first took over, I was acting chief, they asked me our command structure, one of the lawyers, and I said, oh, we don't have captains. They asked the stenographer to turn off the machine. What do you mean you don't have captains? So it's a void right there, and every surrounding town has it. And I just, I don't like to ask for a lot. I never have, but I feel I have to run that department the right way. We have an award-winning department. It should really be run the right way. And you cannot have enough supervision. I'll say it, just look at Ferguson. Look at the Justice Department's report. Read that. Lack of supervision.
So I cut you off because I didn't think the public knew we had no captains, so I asked you that question.
Okay.
You talked about South Brunswick, how many chiefs in New Brunswick versus how many people they have?
What do you mean captains?
A captain.
Three
right.
captains new,
Right.
3 captains north with a deputy director and a director, basically a chief and a deputy chief.
And how many people?
7, don't hold me to it, 74, 75, right, Bob? Give or take.
So
We're the biggest by
74,
far.
75.
New's the only one that's bigger by 20 officers.
So New Brunswick has 120 officers, we have 100 officers, we have no captains. New Brunswick has 3
Great, sir.
captains, and South Brunswick has 70.
Deputy chief and 3.
Right. So clearly, when we compare it to neighboring towns,
Yeah.
right?
We're way, that's the only reason I came. Like I said, in all my years as chief, Bobby knows if I've never really asked for anything, but you know me, I care, and it was time, and I have to, I just have to run, this department the right way. You've always been a great counsel, and you listen, and you take public safety very seriously. But I just feel, at this point, it's the right thing to do for the organization and for the citizens of the town.
Well, we have the best police department in the state of New Jersey, and if our chief comes in and says he needs a captain for succession planning, we should give you what you need, without a doubt.
Thank you very much.
And
That means
just
a lot.
just for the record, in 1989, we had 3 captains.
Yes, we did.
Just saying.
We should.
1989, we had 3.
Sure, it's going to be enough.
And we had 2 in 19, what?
We had 2 in
19
2010.
2010.
But we had 3 in 1989.
I like what Councilman Iago just said. He said, are you sure one's going to be enough?
Yeah, that's what I said.
I'll,
Yeah.
let me say.
Take it one at a time.
Yeah, no, I'm cutting my right there.
Right. Chief, just a comment.
Yes, sir.
You've kept us out of the press for the likes of Ferguson, and we thank you for it. But one of the recommendations that was made for Ferguson was that it should be reflective of the community. And I know you've been making a lot of efforts to recruit, various members of the same
Yes.
mix of the community, the demographics, so that you can better communicate. So, continue that effort, please, and we'll try to help you in whatever way you need to from any communities that you need to reach out to.
Thank you very much. As I always say during the promotional ceremonies, I am one chief that believes very strongly, and I've always said this since the day I took over, your department should reflect your community. That doesn't mean we lower any of our hiring standards for anybody. Our background's a little tougher than most, but I owe it to you folks and the citizens to have the best qualified candidates. Excuse my language, no crap. You have domestics, you have felony, I don't want to hear about it, because that's going to lead to beatings, and we're not going to have that here. We've also made great strides, I feel, in the diversity of our promotions. It takes some time, but I take that very seriously, too. While I will, nobody ever gets any extra points, I think we've been very fair, and you see the ceremonies. We've made great strides here in Franklin, and we will continue to do that moving forward. And I love, if anybody knows anybody, I'll openly say it. I know the public's listening, like Kenny Reed Jr. I love when we get homegrown kids. I love it. So if anybody knows anybody, I love when we get a citizen from Franklin. Yes, I'll say it as the chief. I ultimately have the say in hiring. I like when you're from Franklin. And he's a prime example. He's doing a fine job. We have some other kids from Franklin. Anthony Cheriello, and they're both doing a great job. So we will continue to do our recruiting and get the best qualified. That you could count on.
Other questions for the
Mayor?
chief?
I have one little question, and actually, it's an easier question. Ms. Miller says that she does the printing, but I see printing, postage, and
No,
copiers. You
Ms.
have
Ms.
your own-
Miller does printing of the purchase orders,
Ah,
is what she
okay,
said, and
okay.
that's all she does the printing of. There's printing
Stop.
throughout, as you look through these OE budgets throughout the township, you'll see lines that, on that printing line, dollar figures. Everyone has some responsibility for some type of printing of one type or another.
And what is the books and publications line for? Is that in connection with the promotional exams?
No, it's not. Those are law books, traffic manuals, Title 39, which are the traffic laws, 2C, which are the criminal charge. But we get those books and we keep them in the Detective Bureau. Patrol officers receive them, and each department has them.
No, I just noticed there was an increase in that item.
Every year they change, so like the lieutenant.
And the
you have to
prices
update.
go up.
The prices
So-
go up a little, but we don't have a choice.
Police department actually has a law library in the briefing room closet, and it has all of the statute, the green books. I'm sure you've seen them that would often get taken out at planning board meetings or what have you. There's Title 40, Title 40A, and on, but there's all of them, the health code, and they have to be maintained. So there's Westlaw is the company that we maintain those books through, and you get the leaflets that update them annually. It's a subscription service, so that's just another one of the expenses on that line.
Do they have online access in case from their police cars to some of the things they may want to refer to or anything like that?
Yeah, they do have online access, but some of the things, like the manager said, go really in-depth. So what we'll do is we'll bring them in off the road. The road supervisor, a lieutenant or a sergeant will pull them, and we'll have to sometimes, you'll have 5 or 6 charges, and we'll get there. Or if you go to a motor vehicle accident and you determine that ABC happened, they'll look it up, and they'll be able to add more charges on if that's the avenue they're going.
I'm going to bring up a story from several years ago when I did the police budget, and no names. There's many things that are available online. The issue is when something is not available online because the internet's down and you need it, and you need to have the book. And so we maintain these libraries, like law firms maintain libraries, even though they can go online, and Westlaw has every statute in every case. You maintain these because at 3 a.m, when you have to identify the law and the internet is down, the excuse the internet was down so I couldn't find it is not going to work. So we maintain these libraries for that reason alone. There's a redundancy that in the event that technology can't work, you use the book.
Other questions?
Mayor,
Mr.
couple
Gassano?
quick comments, questions. You were mentioning staffing. I'm listening to all this, and you were talking about the different levels. I go to ELS meetings, EMC meetings that we meet in that room upstairs. Just the other day, I was there for the ELS. It's amazing. I feel like I've seen everything, but I always see something different. It's almost like a museum in there for people who don't know the room. And there was something about the list of all of our police personnel from 1950. And you start seeing names like Bessinet and all. It was very, very interesting. And I know this isn't real relevant, but boy, it'd be nice someday to be able to have some of those. I find them fabulous, interesting, archival
That's a neat room.
pieces. I was going to say, I would love
We
to.
add to it, actually. I don't mean to cut. We add to it every year. Anytime Bobby will tell you, we get something, we get it framed, preserved, and we like to add.
So it's not my imagination. I keep seeing
No,
new
we add
things,
to it
but
all the time.
seriously, someday it'd be great to see maybe our library or the lobby of the public safety, but I think that really actually is intriguing, interesting, and very complimentary history of our police department here in Franklin, for what that's worth. That wasn't the main point. I just thought of it when you guys were talking about the different personnel over the years.
So we started adding on that stuff up in the briefing room, because a lot of times it goes unnoticed, but the officers give their time for Special Olympics and the kids, which is a great cause. And giving the backpacks away or feeding the hungry, and now in the briefing room, we'll get actually plaques saying thank you, especially Special Olympics. And I've done it. I've been at the opening ceremonies. You want to talk about bringing a tear to your eye, you know, how proud you are of these kids. And they give us plaques every year, and the men and women always volunteer, and we started putting them around the briefing room.
That and the Unity
the public sees
Tour.
that
And
when they do a tour, the Unity Tour for fallen officer, when the public will come in, they'll go, wow, we didn't know the officers did all that. So it's nice to see.
maybe someday the library can post some of it. But anyway, you were mentioning about you wanted to keep everything at a structural,
Yes.
what you were comfortable with. I totally agree and totally support that, so I'm not dismissing that. But, of course, being involved with Hamilton Street, a lot of my interaction and conversations and responsibilities are working with the Hamilton Board and other residents in the Hamilton area. So you don't have to go into the detail now of it, but whoever it is that you eventually put into this position, assuming it gets approved with the budget, which seems like it will, can that person, him or her, talk to Hamilton Street Board personally? I mean, you know, in a meeting or whatnot?
It's going to be a member.
He just said they'll be on the board.
They're on it, so they'll go, and one of their things, I don't want to get into every strategy.
No, and we don't need to.
No. One of their job descriptions is going to be to come up with a game plan of sort to work with, not their own, but work with the business owners, the board, the council people in that area, to see what everybody wants. And we're going to come up with the law enforcement end, working with other entities in town to see if we could, you know, do some improvements down there and make some headway.
Yeah, and I wasn't even, I mean, it's great if they can attend. I wasn't even expecting them to attend every meeting.
Absolutely.
It's just at some point, because they'll be able to better explain to them than either myself or there's three other council colleagues that serve on that committee. And I think they'll be thrilled to find out your commitment and the efforts and how this, if it goes through, can assist with that. Yeah, not asking to get into the details now. Just better it comes from them directly than us trying to explain it. And I wasn't sure how this would play out, but certain colleagues have mentioned your ideas, and I think it's great. It kind of kills two birds with one stone. You creating, or you have us this position. You have other categories.
We do have other categories, so I don't want to just cut anyone off, certainly. And the other thing is, and I will just make a point of this, and I know that financial oversight members have been, are aware of this. Ordinarily, the chief of police would give his annual report. We will be bringing the chief of police back for a regular council meeting as a council discussion item. So that's kind of why we're trying to move this process and really focus on budgetary questions. So the annual report will come at a later council meeting. So the next budget.
Yeah, just one item that I have, and that's.
Yes.
I'm a firm believer in cameras based on what happened in London with the subway bombing. They were able to track these people leaving their homes. So that's how, they were able to do that. Now, we're starting to do some of that with cameras
That'll be discussed in the capital budget, Councilman, not on the OE budget.
Okay.
Those are included in the capital budget, and there were cameras purchased that will be soon installed on Hamilton Street.
Now, the second thing is like the chief to just comment on keeping the schools and the houses of worship, safe, because there are large crowds there from any active shooter type of situation, to keep the people safe. So if you want to, you've done a great job, just want everybody to know that what you've been doing, so where the money is being spent is.
Yeah, no, and I'll be real fast.
So, yeah,
Stay on top of that.
briefly, because when you're going to come back and give your report.
Can we do it then?
Yes, please.
Would that be okay,
Yeah,
Councilman?
I
Great,
think that's
thank
more
you.
appropriate.
Okay, so the next budget is the 911 communications budget. And not to steal Lieutenant Durham's thunder, but the overwhelming majority of this $183,000 budget is the maintenance contract with Motorola for the radio system that serves not only the police department, but the entire township, to include EMS, fire, and Public Works, construction code, engineering, and everyone that has a radio, including your manager who has a radio. So that maintenance contract is the township-wide radio system. So, Lieutenant, you have anything more to add to that?
I do not.
And it's the only thing that went up, and that's because the contract went up.
That's correct.
Goes up every year, though, doesn't it, Bob?
Pretty much, yeah. You know, we try as hard as we can to negotiate with Motorola, but Motorola being the worldwide corporation that it is, they have very little sympathy for us in the fact that their contract goes up. So.
Next item.
Next item would be the emergency management. This is
That's the same as last year.
This is primarily contingency money in the event of an emergency. We have to, again, I go back to money must be budgeted to spend money. So therefore, if in fact we were to have a large-scale emergency such as Hurricane Sandy or Hurricane Irene, which we had back-to-back, we need to have money in that budget to spend that money. So
And it's flat.
it's flat.
Okay.
Yep.
Move
Flat,
on.
no increase. And the last is animal control. As you all know, the police department oversees the animal control function here in town. That one has a minor increase of $1,300. I'll let the lieutenant explain that.
That increase was basically services that maybe have increased a little, the drugs that are used, the vet bills, when they're euthanized, the chemicals. That is really where that went up. And again, I know Katie does a great job over there. We have Second Chance, and her group is Angel Tales. That's her charity where people donate. So we've been able to honestly make it work for this amount, which is really great with the help of a lot of other people. But unfortunately, things go up, and it was those.
So as you see, the budget for animal control is $22,000, so $23,000. We'll just make a nice round number there. Through the volunteer efforts of Second Chance for Animals and Angel Tales, we reduced the overall cost of running the shelter to $23,000. It's estimated that it would be in the neighborhood of about $123,000, and that about $100,000 through the efforts of the volunteers is raised through donations of not only cash, but also, and this is where we have to make estimates, the food, cat litter, supplies, cleaning supplies. Our shelter would cost far more than $23,000 to run were it not for those volunteer organizations. So this is just a little plug for them, for anybody who might be watching tonight. We certainly appreciate all of the efforts of our residents and donations, and we ask for more. This is kind of a unique relationship our shelter has with these nonprofit organizations. Second Chance and Angel Tales their sole benefactor is Franklin Township. They offset costs for veterinary fees. They offset the cost of spay and neuter of the strays that are found before they are allowed to be adopted. So it's really wonderful. I guess that's the best way I could put it. It's a very wonderful thing for all of us.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to say, my daughter got her bunny from the animal shelter, and yes, I did make a donation of food. So every 8 months or so, I have to donate food because that's where I go. And yes, they offer veterinary services, sort of at a discount, I believe.
It is at a discount. We have a veterinarian who operates out of a trailer outside of the animal shelter, and it is at a reduced rate for people. And its service is primarily related to things like spay and neuter. Every Tuesday, the vet is there. A lot of people use it. And a lot of people use it. They do.
So that is definitely a good benefit for the town.
And I believe that that concludes the police department budgets that the police department is responsible for, and if anyone has any other questions.
No?
Nope. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. And
Thank you, Chief and Lieutenant.
On behalf of the department, thank you for all your support. This council's been very good to us, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
See ya.
Looks like next up would be fire prevention. Mr. House.
Talk to you later. Thanks. So the fire prevention budget will be presented by the Director of Fire Prevention, John House, and his Deputy Director, Andrew Berardo. Gentlemen?
Thank you. I emailed out the report to everybody on Friday. I hope you got that. And if you have any questions on it, you can ask them. The budget went up $200 this year. That basically was because our NFPA subscription service went up actually $230. We were able to reduce another line by $30 because the what we call our canned smoke that we use when we test the smoke detectors, we actually found a different vendor through the help of Joyce, our purchasing agent, that's a little bit cheaper. So we were able to save $30, and the total net change is $200. It's basically the fee went up, and I have no control over that.
Okay.
Other than that, everything's status quo.
There are additional, so for those of you who would look at fire prevention's budget and say, how do we run a department that has, how many inspectors, John, now? 8?
We have 8 inspectors, the deputy, the director,
and a full-time clerical position.
Full-time clerical.
And
a part-time inspector.
And a part-time inspector. How do you run that department on $7,546 a year? Well, you really don't. The report that was emailed out to you also details that some of the larger expenses are paid for either by the different fire districts that serve Franklin Township, or they're paid for out of the penalty trust. When John's office finds violations and penalties are assessed, that money is then allowed to be used to further the functions of his office. So there is some expense involved that are covered by that. Things such as the turnout gear that John's inspectors wear in the case of a fire. Things, their uniforms that are required to be fire retardant materials, so they're a little bit more expensive. Those types of expenses are covered under, that portion of, I don't want to say John's budget, but really they're outside of the regular budget.
Correct.
So I do have a question. In the 14 and 15, you budgeted $46,000 and spent $57,000. Am I reading that correctly? And you're doing the same thing again this year?
Where? Their budget's $7,500.
Okay, I must be on the wrong page, sorry.
Okay. It's actually, it's under the fire prevention tab.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, we should talk about, there's another request from the fire prevention office outside of the OE budget. Yes, sir.
Fire prevention, I'm looking at the fire prevention page. Line 50
The overall subtotal for,
and snow plowing equipment. Why
Yeah,
is
and I
it
don't-
saying snow
I'm
plowing?
not quite sure where that's coming.
But it says.
It says
and
subtotal
snow-
DPW work and snow plowing equipment is the side, that's obviously a
Category,
typo.
it's like-
Oh.
Categories, it pulled from the wrong spreadsheet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, obviously, we're not snow plowing with the fire prevention inspectors. 050 is the is a different subcategory.
Not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea. Well, and actually, in the last.
I think it copied, if you look at those numbers, they're the exact same as the line above it.
Right.
Somehow it copied.
Just a generic total, a generic category, because depending on the budgets, it includes.
Subtotals.
Yeah, just pull the wrong category. So the other thing that we should discuss now is if we go to, they have that in their books? That. Right. The salary and wage on the very last page, you have a salary and wage, overall salary and wage spreadsheet, and listed there is on line 298 of that spreadsheet, which is it's on the very last page of that salary and wage spreadsheet. It says new position, part-time clerk, fire prevention at $19,500. If everybody, I'll watch and see if everybody seems to have found what I'm talking about. It's small print, I know. That's why I have my glasses on too, Councilman. I get it. So much like line 301, where the chief requested captain, a little bit different here at a much reduced rate. John has requested a part-time clerical position to assist within the fire prevention office, and I'll let John talk a little bit about what that person's responsibilities would be and why he feels there's a necessity for that.
Okay. Back prior to 2009, we had this position. We had a full-time clerical and a part-time clerical. Unfortunately, in 2009, the town had to do a number of cuts, and that position was cut out. Since then, we've been trying to make do with not having that position, but we're growing to the point where the full-time clerical, myself, and Andrew, we can't keep up with everything. We have a significantly higher workload. We're doing many more inspections, which creates much more paperwork. Even our money, if you look in 2009, we were bringing in, about 20% less in income. That income, all those generate more paper, more time, everything. And it's just, we've come to the bust point where we have to have additional help. That's basically where it comes down to.
And these additional tasks are administrative tasks that you have to meet certain deadlines, or paperwork has to be filed, or it have to be answered in response to, what, open requests, lawsuits, legal.
Don't start on open requests.
All of those things, yes.
Four-letter word to many of us.
All of John's department's responsibilities are mandated responsibilities. They're either mandated by the state and the fire code, or they're mandated locally by our ordinance. And so all of those things that are done have to be done. The report that John gave you does in a very good way spell that out as far as the mandates. In discussing this with John, one of my frustrations in what's currently occurring within his office is that fire inspectors are performing clerical functions instead of a clerk. So what we have here is, instead of those fire inspectors being out in the field doing what we hired them to do, they're in the office doing clerical functions, which just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So that's when John came to me and we talked about this, and then actually, and I'll just kind of share with all of you what was originally discussed. What was originally discussed was a full-time position that would be shared by the clerk's office, who, when she does her budget in presentation will talk to you about what her needs are. And the fire prevention office, as you know, full-time employees work a 35-hour work week. And in this particular case, it was decided that it would be much more beneficial to request 2 25-hour part-time employees than 1 35-hour full-time employee, so that we could get far more out of that employee than we would if we were sharing them across 2 offices. So there, you'll hear a part-time request from the clerk and a part-time request from fire prevention. The amount of work that has come to the fire prevention office since 2010, when that position was eliminated. I know it was 09, but it was the 10 budget year. In 6 years, if you just imagine the growth of this town and the fact that mandated inspections such as every time a house is sold, a fire inspector has to go out and inspect CO2 and CO2, I'm sorry, CO. Thank you, I know. CO inspections on the carbon monoxide and the fire and the smoke detectors. A good sign of the returning economy is when more houses are sold. Well, more houses were sold, and last year than the year before, and the year before that. So that means more inspections. That means more paperwork. That's all of those things are what the responsibilities of this new part-time clerk would be.
Thank you. I just think it's good for the public to know what additional tasks. And
Couldn't agree more. That's why I think it's important to recognize the fact that those tasks are there. They're mandated by, whether it be the state or locally, by the law. And the fact is that we have fire inspectors doing a lot of those responsibilities right now. They shouldn't be.
Question, can we use technology like handhelds that, they can pretty much put in the basic findings, and some clerk then, tabulates and adds the whole thing up and does whatever clerical function, but it's just, checking off boxes or whatever. To simplify it is just the thought that I had, similar to what we have with the PSE&G type of people or others that come with handheld devices, or even your FedEx people have the handheld devices that they check off things and are linked up with the central computer. That's just a thought, that maybe bring more efficiency to the system.
That's not going to help us with this clerical position. I mean, that would help the inspectors to some extent, but we're also talking about, right now, I don't know if we have the funds to, you're talking about a significant number of, computers and air cards and everything else for them. But the need that we have right now is we need this clerical person to handle all that paperwork and assist in the office functions and everything.
All I'm saying is if we try to automate it, maybe, it'll save some money and also save the inspectors time more so than anything else, so that they could do more inspections. So that's
Certainly, we can, the councilman, you raised a valid point, and we can certainly look at that for the next year's budget as we move forward. Absolutely. If there's some way, like we're doing with the water utility and with the construction code, to put iPads in their hands in the field to try to streamline those processes. I agree.
And another point that my deputy just pointed out to me, to make sure you're aware. Unfortunately, the state is mandating that we have everything in paper form. I wish they wouldn't, because I have to keep asking for more filing cabinets and space to put them, but this is a problem I don't understand. We can put it in the computer, but they say you still have to have it in the paper form so that you can walk over to the cabinet and take it out for the person.
Yes,
It's a state mandate, but we can't get away.
At the conference of mayors, I got up to ask the leadership, can we please have a law for electronic signatures so that we wouldn't have to do this, and None of them seem to understand, so I'm going to be making some phone calls. And that would save a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of space, a lot of paper.
And after, you and I have had this conversation over and over again, and I just can't understand why the protocols can't be approved at the state level so this can be done. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And we are spending a tremendous amount of money unnecessarily.
It's one of my life missions.
Thank you.
If any support you need, I'll get a lot of fire officials around the state to help you, because we could email forms to people, but we still have to then either mail it to them or hand deliver them the paper form, because that's what is required, and they won't let us get out of it.
No, just the thought is that, okay, our clerk's doing a great job in terms of digitizing a lot of our records, and we're saving a lot of rental space for just storing all those records. So we could look at doing the same with paper. And when it comes to a paper form, it can still be made available by printing it out, just hitting the print button.
The problem is the
Yeah,
signature, Councilman, and it's
Yeah,
a very complex issue, and I'm telling you that the state of New Jersey said no.
Okay.
So that's the problem. It's not us, it's not our choice, it's the state of New Jersey and the
other-
mandate.
Some of them they have allowed that, but there's other ones like ours, we're
Well, in the banking industry, billions of dollars is transferred every day in electronic signatures and.
Okay,
so,
next
thank you.
item.
Okay.
Any other items?
That's their budget.
That's it. That is their budget. Well, then, any other questions?
Any other questions?
Then, Mr. Lupo, come on
Thank you.
down.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Come on up.
Thank you.
Come on down, Mr. Lupo.
Thank you, sir.
Let's hope the price is right.
Find out shortly. I'm happy to know, Mr. Mayor, that, thank you, that the state recently did approve digital signing for engineers. We're still lobbying for architects, plumbing, licensed plumbers and licensed electricians. Hopefully we'll get them. We can cut a lot of paperwork with that, I do agree.
Excellent.
Our budget remained flat this year. We just moved money around from some of our contingency funds to some printing and binding areas, some book areas. We went through a 2015 code change, and we're looking at $10,000 plus in new code books on a three-year basis. So it got rather expensive, but didn't cost us anything. We just moved money out of contingency funding, that's all. I don't have any other issues because we were running flat. We've run flat, as a matter of fact, for the past 4 years.
I'm having trouble finding.
Right.
Uniform construction.
There it is.
You got to look for, it's like,
The third row.
the fancy names are in the book for all the departments. And you call it the tax collector, but it's really the collector of revenue, and we got to come up with the fancy names for the tabs here. Under
It
uniform.
actually says uniform
Commercial
commercial
code. It should say
code.
Construction.
And it should
But
say
it should
construction
construction.
code.
Uniform Commercial Code is a whole different set of legal situations.
UC6.
Guiding
Cut it
business.
Short, yeah. Yeah.
Any questions for Mr. Lupo about his budget? It's interesting, you have some things that went up, some things went down, and it all came out even.
We actually did that. Most of the money we ran, Mr. Mayor, is contingency money. We haven't had, knock on wood, any emergencies recently. The most recent we had was, it was the police department when they had that shooting just a couple weeks ago. After the shooting, the building had to come down. That was ours. We negotiated, though, with the bank, the powers that be, and didn't cost the town anything, but typically that contingency funding is for emergencies like that and for us to be able to take care of them. We took care of it and had the owners take care of the problem, so it didn't cost the town anything to get it done.
Just going back to that, you raise a good point, is how does it just miraculously get to be the same number? It doesn't miraculously get that way. So all the department heads were given the direction by me to maintain their budget at their previous year's number. And if it meant that they needed to move, so if you don't put money in a line in a budget, the state of New Jersey will not let you charge to that line if you you can't move money into a zero-line budget. You have to have at least $1 in that line, according to the state of New Jersey, to move money later on in the year from one line to another within your own departmental budget. So we fund these lines, even though, like, Vince refers to them as contingency budgets. I kind of hate that word, even though I like Vince. It's not really it's not really the contingency in the way that we think of it. The only contingency budget that we have is actually in my budget, and that's for the entire township. What these are is you put in a number that's appropriate for what you think may happen. And Vince's department, it's hard to believe that in the construction code office things may happen, but they may happen. A fire in a building that is abandoned, and the township is ultimately responsible to remedy that situation, whether it be to tear the building down or to board it up. That may happen, and we don't always know how much that will cost. So Vince has to use his best guess estimates here in certain lines of the budget to cover those types of expenses, and that's really what he's talking about as far as contingency. It's more of an emergency funding, in certain lines that he's discussing, and we can move money within his budget so we can meet expenses that were higher than we thought by taking them from ones that are budgeted that way.
And if you mind and also, I have represented the town at the Board of Appeals since I've been here, as opposed to bringing the attorney in, so I've saved attorney's fees over all those years, and taking that on myself.
And that's very good.
And that's very good, but there still are the potential for legal fees, and actually currently there are legal fees that get charged to the uniform construction budget, and that has gone down dramatically. But the Pulte
that was our biggest one.
was charged to construction's legal line. So.
Any other items on the budget?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
That concludes.
That concludes what we have on the budget. Now, certainly there are three of us here that were not on the agenda. Now, I don't know what you want to do. We're done? No, you're not ready? I mean, we can certainly, we can, if you would like to get out of the way right now, two very quick ones, we can do the finance department budget and we can do the manager's budget. Kathy, you want, I can do my budget without really looking at it.
Council, to...
It's before
Yeah, that's
time.
fine.
Let's do it.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. We can get those, then that'll give us a little bit of more time the next time we meet.
Right.
So the manager's budget
Next time we meet.
is, let me get a
Wait,
find
next.
it.
The beginning.
It's the beginning.
So it should be in the very beginning. I didn't jump enough there. There I am. So the manager's budget has remained exactly the same. And other than the $240,000 that is actually called contingency, going back to what I had said earlier, there is $38,000 budgeted for office supplies. That is for the entire township. All office supply purchases were centralized several years ago and are done out of my office. So every request for office supplies goes through my office. So that's the largest portion of my budget other than contingency, and it's to make those purchases for the entire township. there's postage and express. Hopefully, I don't have to do a lot, but that's if I have to do FedEx or UPS or anything like that. Obviously, last year I didn't have to do a great deal. Printing and binding, that's just what it sounds like, a small amount for letterhead, business cards, the like. Then there's conferences and meetings, or just that. I don't attend too many.
Looks like
primarily
you're
the
all
League of
done with your
Municipalities.
furniture and furnishings?
All done with furniture and furnishings. No reason for that, absolutely. No reason to budget it.
How about your carpet?
Well, that comes in capital that
Oh,
the
okay.
Department of Public Works will talk about in those capital requests. Yeah, I know, it's pretty pitiful. I agree. And that is my budget, so it has remained the same as it was last year, and you can see that of the $281,000 and $281,850 budgeted, only really 10% had been spent, and there's not much more than that spent beyond the three quarters that are reflected here. Really, my only recurring expense is the copy machine that I share with the HR department. And that serves also as a printer and a scanner and a copier. So it's a multifunction machine. So my office does not cost a tremendous amount on the OE side.
And this does not include the mayor's cookies and...
No, I purchased, so any snacks,
chocolate candy
any
that we
snacks
eat.
in the manager's office are funded from the manager's wallet. So yes, so the chocolate cookies and the butter cookies are courtesy of my Costco membership.
I deserve that, Councilman.
Is that what he likes, the butter?
No,
And even an
you weren't there.
occasional
You weren't there the other night.
Even an occasional pizza will be funded from my ATM card. Yes, no, those types of luxuries are not funded from taxpayer money.
Mr. Manager? may I
Yes, sir.
suggest that you vary the type of,
I try to mix up the cookies
Yeah,
as
the
well
candy.
as, and Councilwoman Sherman, the chocolate candies likewise, Costco. So
Clearly, I have lost control of
yeah,
this meeting.
there's because he's been in my office and probably partaken of those.
So if there are no other serious questions.
There are no other serious questions. That's the manager's
So
budget.
the manager's budget was basically $282,000 this year.
Yes.
$282,000 last year. Would you please read what it was the year before?
$293,950, and the year before that it was $330,100. I became manager in 2000 at the end of 2012, and so so I inherited the 2012 budget in 2013. That was actually a reduction, I believe, from 2012. We brought it down, and we've been bringing it down to a point where this number is certainly discussed at the Financial Oversight Committee level, and we did in fact discuss that number again this year. This is our contingency. This is in case of emergency money. This is for all of those things that we didn't think would happen, but happened. As you can see, very little of it gets spent annually. There's been none spent to date. This, now when we go and now balance budgets at the, on December 31st, when we have to do transfers, and you all hear of that when we do the, it's on the agenda that there's a transfers that are done after November 1st. If money needs to be moved from one part of the budget to another to cover shortfalls, this is where it's done. You can see that in 2014, 113,862 of that 240 was used. The overwhelming majority of that is just what I'm talking about, transfers at end of year to cover shortages elsewhere. But as of my recollection, I didn't have to use any of it other than for transfers this past year, did I? Oh, that's what we did. So there were a number of capital requests that were made for the 2016 budget that were presented to Financial Oversight, totaling about $77,000 for a variety of small-scale capital that really weren't capital, like things like painting the senior center and redoing the stage. So Kathy and I sat down and found that it would be a much more appropriate to get those things done in 2015. They were very small projects that really didn't fit the category of capital. That should have never been really on the capital list for 2016 because they were much more operating expenses than they were capital expenses. So we got done with those projects and funded them out of the 2015 budget so they wouldn't have to be funded out of 2016.
Years ago, actually, Mr. Daley changed what was going on here. Each department had their own contingency fund, and the sum of that was greater than what is now the manager's contingency fund. But he realized if he had one fund, then that smaller fund could fund all of them because none of them used all of theirs.
That logic was very sound, and it was also, and I will tell you that the other thing that was very sound, and I saw some nodding heads, was the consolidation of office supplies. So as you're all aware, I used to do the police department budget. What I will tell you is that the police department's office supply line alone exceeded what we currently budget for the entire township. And as you can see, as of 9/30, we were at 25,000 out of the 38,000, and I can tell you that on December 31st, we were under budget by several $1,000s on office supplies in 2015. So clearly, the consolidation of the office supply purchases means that there's a whole lot less paper clips being purchased. It's a much better way to do that type of commodity.
Well, it also eliminates what people tend to wrongly classify as office supplies.
It does, and
it
we
becomes
have
a catch-all for
we have been very strict about that,
Right.
and in fact, so that is one of the things that sometimes doesn't sit well with the people in the different departments who are ordering those supplies, because the truth is that based on our current contract, well, it's not the township's contract, but the office supply contract with WB Mason, for those of you who are familiar with the WB Mason catalog, it has everything.
Everything in the world.
I mean, it has candy bars. It has it all. Well, just because it's in the WB Mason catalog doesn't mean it's an office supply. And so
It's a good way to control costs.
Absolutely, it's a very good way to.
It was
control costs.
it was monumental.
See, I mean, it's a huge decrease in the amount of money they're spending out of the office supply line. Huge.
I mean, the change is when Ken and I don't know. I think most '09. I think Mayor and someone just got on council, and partly because the recession and all the problems that came with that. But that just seems to have worked great.
So unless someone wants to harass me more about the
cookies?
manager's cookie budget, we could move on to the next item.
So the next one we were going to discuss is the finance budget, and if you thought mine had only like limited things in it, you wait till you hear hers. And I've just been criticized by calling it an ATM card. Apparently, someone feels I should refer to it as a debit card. I guess I'm dating myself. Lucky I didn't call it a Mac card, Bill. Those of you who remember what Mac cards were, I'll really date myself. Kathy, it's all yours.
The finance budget is 4 tabs further after the manager's budget. The primary component of the finance budget is to pay for the financial consultants, staff, and salary. So Andy Hodgelik and the 3 staff that actually function in the finance office, that goes to pay their salaries. That's line 028. If you look at the finance total budget, you'll see from last year to this year, it went up a total of $910. And that's because out of this budget in printing and binding, we purchased the cash receipt books that are used by all the departments. And we keep a control of them for audit purposes. It's required by the auditors, so we pay for them out of this budget, and they used like double the volume last year that we had used the previous year in cash receipts. So that was the 910 increase. However, if you look at the 2016 budget compared to 2013 and 14, you'll see overall we're down $3,000 compared to 13 and 14. Basically, it's a pretty much flat budget. The other component, if you go back about 10 pages, actually, it's the second to last page in this tab, is also the audit services line of the budget. It's the second to last, I'm sorry, it's the last page. Oh, okay, you don't even have it.
Next
Sorry.
one.
I will just tell you with audit, and it's on your summary page, the colored page. Audit services are not in the department budget, they're on page 2. The fourth line down, on the second page of the colored, the department OE 3-year budget comparison.
You're talking about at the beginning of the book,
Right, I'm sorry. In overview.
an overview.
Overview, second page, the yellow column going down, it's the third column over, and audit services are the fourth line down. You'll notice they went up $2,000 from last year. The audit services, our vendor agreed to keep their price the same this year. The increase of the $2,000 is with the increased SEC EMMA reporting for the disclosures relating to our bonds and all this information that we have to keep current and report on every year. We're now paying basically for $2,000 annually to make sure that we have a firm that comes in and double checks that we have everything filed properly, because the SEC is really coming down and fining entities if they don't maintain everything. Kind of a leftover from Madoff to make sure that everything's on the up and up and properly reported. And a lot of what's reported could have to do with changed security ratings, not even just for us, but for other entities that we sell bonds to. So this firm for $2,000 a year basically is, yeah, it keeps us safe.
Just so what EMMA stands for?
It's an emergency management grant. Oh, I'm sorry, Emma. That's the database they use to file your SEC disclosures. You have to go online. I have absolutely no idea what the acronym means, but it's the website. You have to go on live and maintain all our information with the SEC.
Okay, I was just curious. I
Sorry.
never heard of EMMA before,
And
EMMA.
it's also our acronym for the emergency management grant. Sorry.
No problem. Okay, so it's just 2,000 more.
I'm not quite sure what it stands for either. What I do know is that in discussions with our bond counsel, our financial consultant, and our auditor, all three, who I trust implicitly, said this is far beyond you to maintain this at this point. Spend the $2,000 a year. And I joke, to keep yourself out of jail. I mean, obviously, it's not to keep ourselves out of jail. It's to keep ourselves in good standing with the SEC. And clearly, when you're an entity that sells bonds, you want to be in good graces with the SEC. So,
Any question on the financial audit issues?
Just a comment. The book is much better organized this year than in the previous years, where it was double the size, and you couldn't get to half the tabs.
You should thank Kathy certainly for putting the
Right.
book together, but thank the Financial Oversight Committee for making that decision so that we could streamline this based on our recommendations. Financial Oversight said yes. We always felt that there was a lot of superfluous paperwork in these books that really was unnecessary.
And it's
I
pertinent
mean,
to
you
the
see,
point.
Kathy and I have the big book. If you have questions, we can certainly refer to it and answer your questions. I think that the cover sheets alone are sufficient for what we're doing here.
The color coding, that would work good throughout. Or maybe it's just the larger print that's making it so attractive. No, seriously, it's so easy.
It's been pointed out to me that
The cost.
Color
printing costs money. There you go.
And the jury is out on whether that's a real good fiscal expense too. So we try to choose
Pick and choose.
with discretion where we use color. We also, you won't see it here, but I actually recycle, I process so much paper that I literally, like Joyce Miller in purchasing, I recycle all of my paper. So everything that's not for public dispersion, sometimes I miss it and actually do it, is two-sided.
If we, I was
Good
going to
for
say,
you.
if we just did two-sided, that would cover the cost. I see we're only doing one-sided, that might cover the costs for the color ink. So, why?
We try to use discretion with that. I do think the ease in
We'll
addressing.
take it under advisement for next year's budget book, Councilman.
Can I make one suggestion?
Yes.
If you could put the tabs in the order of the presenters,
In all honesty, so as you realize, some of this, because of weather and what have you, was done last minute. While Kathy was putting the books together, I was polling all of the department heads individually to find out about their availability for tonight. So unfortunately, that,
Yeah.
in the future, you're absolutely right.
If you
And
can,
that's
that
what we
would
would
be-
prefer to
it's
do.
a nice thing.
The problem was, I didn't get confirmation on department heads until Friday, and Kathy's department was putting the books together while I was getting confirmation.
Understood.
What
Yeah,
we
that's
will
all.
do next year. Last year, your tabs were A, B, C, D, but it didn't give the description. This year, we meant to do it A and then the title. So I have a note already that next year, we're going back to the letter plus the title, so we can say, okay, finance is F. So you'll have an idea where, instead of saying, okay, it's 3/4 of the way through the book, you can go to the letter tab with the description. I think that'll make
Yeah.
it much easier.
Good idea, thanks.
If the tab has the proper description, we ought to be able to find it.
Should be able to, but sometimes.
And we'll help you along.
Yeah.
Okay. Deputy
Faster
Mayor,
is better.
Deputy Mayor Chase, I was wondering if you wanted to report on the utility budget for this.
I was just looking, trying to find it.
Well, we're not doing that tonight, so if there's a reason why, I mean, it will be discussed at the next budget hearing.
It was just here.
I know exactly why it was.
And I thought he'd want to.
It's on that,
so-
it's on that page.
So moving.
He remembers questions.
He does.
Moving on, I think we are complete.
We are complete for
Motion to
tonight.
adjourn.
So we have a
Motion to
motion
adjourn.
to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
No, you cannot
What's our
second
next-
your own
Oh,
motion.
Kimberly,
I said motion to adjourn.
Did we have, Mr. Mayor, did we need to come up with other dates? I thought you
Tomorrow.
said to bring
It's on the
it
agenda for tomorrow council meeting. It's on tomorrow's agenda.
Oh, okay.
Unless you
So we
feel
have-
compelled to do it
What?
now.
Anne Marie, do you have a comment? No. All right. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of adjourning?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Be well, Franklin.